let's jump into this then. Obviously, we got second half questions. We've got trade deadline. I got to even ask you about the draft, but we'll start with sort of the local scandal today, which is that the Mariners announced their 3 starters for this series against the Astros, and they're going to go Castillo and then Kirby and then Wu. And so the best pitcher this year, Logan Gilbert, isn't going to pitch in a 3-game series against the team that's 1 game back. Surprising to you?
I guess so. I mean, he was at the All-Star game though, right? And the others weren't?
He was. He didn't pitch at the All-Star game.
Yeah. I don't know the rationale behind this, but I'm just going to, come out and say this. Organizations have so much information, right? So much information that we're not privy to. And I'm not just talking information on matchups and stuff like that, but information on health and rest and what they need. And I just don't think rotation order at the beginning of the second half, regardless of how important the series may or may not be, is all that pertinent to the long-term health of a team going forward. I get that it's a big series. I'm not minimizing that in any way. And I get that Logan Gilbert has been the best of the group, but I want to caution people that this is not a dumb organization. It's quite the opposite, actually. They're very good at what they do in a lot of ways on the baseball operations side. And so I just think sitting here and yelling about something like that is probably misguided, and because there is very likely a reason and explanation, and the only reason you don't know it is because Ryan Divish and Adam Jude haven't been up at the ballpark the last couple days.
Well, I think there is quite a bit to that, and I even suggested maybe they don't
and
want...
Shannon Dreyer. Sorry, Shannon.
Thank you. That's our person right there.
I know. That's why she's very good too. I didn't want to exclude her.
Maybe even they don't want. Maybe they want Logan to pitch after Wu, knowing that Brian doesn't always go deep into games. Maybe they don't want Wu and Miller back to back, and the only way to do that here for the second half is to kind of slot them in this way. So yes, you kind of. There's any number of reasons.
Okay, 1 to 10. What level would you say this scandalous rotation placement is among fans?
Like a 2 or 3. It's not a big scandal.
Okay. You just need content because they haven't been playing. I got
well,
it.
that's part of the problem, yes.
All right.
And because there's only so long we can talk about the same names here at the deadline, but let's do that anyway. We talked to Jerry earlier this week, and he said that the market is thin right now, certainly on impact guys. We talked last week to Dan Schulman and to Adnan Virk to figure out whether or not Toronto was going to do anything, and they both seemed pretty adamant that neither Vlad nor Bichette were going anywhere, that it was just going to be the rental guys that they would be moving. So let me throw some names. I'm going to give you 5 or 6 names. Jerry said they need contact and they need impact. That was sort of, I'm going to boil it down to those 2 things. I'm going to give you 6 names.
By the way, before you give me these names, that's like, I mean, if you're having contact and impact, that's like literally all the best players in baseball.
Well, and that's what I said. We went through that. I was like, okay, so who has contact and impact? And it's like Aaron Judge.
Nobody.
And it's like, nobody. But what about contact or impact? And maybe you add 1 contact guy and 1 impact guy. I don't know. Anyway, let me give you 5 or 6 names. Let's start with Brent Rooker, who is the guy that I think, at least for now, is the best option for them because he should be available. How good is Brent Rooker, and what would it take to get him?
Brent Rooker has been excellent this season, and doing so in a ballpark in Oakland, that's not easy to hit him, by the way, and an environment that is just embarrassing. He also is a late bloomer and a guy in the ilk. He's having the kind of year this year that Mitch Garver had last year. right? A little bit more power, more playing time. He's not a good outfielder, but if you want a bat, he has a chance to be the best impact bat that you can get. He is prone to some very rough stretches. So when he's hot, he's really hot. When he's not, he is really not. So you need to understand there's going to be some bad with that good, but I'm with you. He's probably, if not at the top of the list, then certainly near it.
And it shouldn't be crazy hard to get him, right? I mean, like, you'd have to give something up, but it's not like Luis Robert, right?
No, not even close to Luis Robert. But it will. I don't think it'll be cheap because look at the names we're talking about, dude. If Brent Rooker's at the top of your list.
Yep, I get it. All right, well, let me give you the next two guys on my list. Two guys that do provide some semblance. They probably have the best combo of contact and impact that might be available. Let's start with Yandy Diaz.
Not having the year that he did last year. The contact is hard, though. Like, that's Yandy Diaz broke out last year and turned into what I think people had, especially in Tampa Bay, had anticipated he was going to be for a long time because he's a big dude and he hits the ball really hard, but it never went out of the park. And last year he started hitting some home runs, and there's been some regression this year, but I think you're spot on with that. And I think if you are a Tampa Bay Ray who is in arbitration, you are generally speaking going to be available on his trade. And Yandy Diaz has, he's not making a ton of money, and he would be a good fit, but it's the impact that I wonder about. The Mariners right now have a first baseman who's almost like a light version of Yandy Diaz in Ty France. And I don't know that the upgrade is significant enough to pay a significant price that Yandy Diaz might cost.
Just to compare their OPS, they're not that far off this year. You're right. I mean, Yandy's at a 726, down from an 805 for his career. Ty France is 675, so yeah, about 50 points, but not enormous. So what about his mate across the diamond? What about Isaac Paredes?
That's the one that to me is the fit, right? I think if the Mariners have a realistic, reasonable option, it's probably Isaac Paredes. Now, let's talk about what he does, because I think this is really this is when you're giving up a prospect and he's going to cost a guy. Like, he's good enough that he's going to cost someone who it would sting for you to give up. What Isaac Paredes does is one thing, and that's not to call him an entirely one-dimensional player, but he does one thing better than just about everyone in the game. He hits for power to the pull side, which is a great skill to have. Travis Bazzana improved his pull power and got picked number 1 overall in the draft by Cleveland this year. Like, it is a useful enough skill that Isaac Paredes made an all-star game this year, and that he's batting in the middle of the lineup for, a Rays team that recently has been awesome. Here's the problem. What happens if the pull side power goes down? What happens if the bat, which already is not fast, by the way, slows down even more? What happens if that goes away for some reason? You're left with a player who's not good. He's not a good defender at third base. He's not a guy who's going to walk a whole lot. But if you want an impact bat, Mike, and you want an elite skill, Isaac Paredes is the guy. And frankly, if I'm the Mariners at this point, it's the risk I'm taking. I understand that Josh Rojas has defensively been excellent at third base this year. I have no problem putting Isaac Paredes' bat in there and saying, Josh, you can come in late in the games, or we can, use Paredes at DH, or
Can he
there
play
are
first?
ways. Yeah, he can play first. Not
Who
very
can't?
well,
but anybody can play first.
Yeah, I know. Do you want Ty France plays first well though? Does he not?
I mean, it's fine. It's not like elite. It's fine.
Yeah. I don't think Paredes is fine.
No, even at first. I never forget talking to Kevin Youkilis when he made his transition from third to first, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Dude, a monkey can play first base. This is the dumbest thing in the world. Please don't ever ask me about this again." I was like, "Okay, I didn't realize it was that easy."
And yet, a first baseman went 4th overall and 6th overall in the draft this year. So it's it may be easy theoretically to play first, but playing first well, I don't think is easy.
All right, let me give you the name that I'm least excited about and would be shocked if the Mariners traded for. But
just quickly, where's is this a list? Is this a preference order list?
Paredes is probably ahead of Yandy Diaz on mine when I wrote it out, but I for some reason gave you Diaz first. Yeah, Rooker, then Paredes.
I think Paredes is ahead of Rooker.
All right, then Diaz, and now I'm off my preference list because really those are the 3 guys I'm most interested in. I don't think I love Lamont Wade if he's available, but I don't think he's going to be available. Is Johnathan India going to be available?
Maybe, probably not. I mean, he works. He's a good utility guy.
But he gets on base, right? I mean, they could use that.
I don't think. Yeah, the way you're making him sound, I think he's like a. Oh, I was going to say something there and that I'm not supposed to. He is a very poor man's Ben Zobrist.
Well, the Mariners have lusted after a Ben Zobrist type for as long as I've been here in Seattle, so maybe he's their guy.
I know, but do you want poverty version of
Not really, and certainly not one who's been doing that in Cincinnati for his whole career, which doesn't tell me a lot.
That ballpark. Johnathan India is a perfectly good baseball player. I don't think the Mariners need perfectly good baseball players at this point. I think they need really good.
But they might need
players.
both. They might need a really good player and a guy like Johnathan India.
You're right. If they were to get Paredes and India or Rooker and India, if they were to be able to pull off the little daily double there, that's fair.
That's a game changer. Guy with a 350 on base percentage at the top of your lineup and somebody with some impact in the middle. That would be pretty good. Now, the guy that I don't like at all here is Jazz Chisholm. Just looking at all of his numbers, I've not watched the guy play much, so maybe you'll have some other, insight that I'm missing. He doesn't have impact. He doesn't hit for contact. He doesn't seem to do much of anything well other than run. What am I missing on Jazz?
He's got power. He's got tools. He's flashy. The clubhouse stuff, I wouldn't go near.
Meaning you don't believe that he's a bad clubhouse guy, which is fine. I don't even think about it as the clubhouse.
No. You think the opposite.
Oh, you think he is a bad clubhouse guy?
I think anybody who goes out and calls out Miguel Rojas in the fashion that he did, Miguel Rojas, who's universally recognized as a very good guy and a good clubhouse guy. I think Jazz is like that classic case where you have somebody who is super talented and really toolsy, and maybe he just needs to go to a different place and be in a different environment where he can put it all together. But I think Skip Schumacher's a good manager, man. I think Skip Schumacher's a really good manager, and if somebody who grew up in the Tony La Russa tree and has seen what good managers look like, can't exactly compel him to be a good citizen. I wonder what happens when you have a clubhouse that in the past had issues with how Scott Service handled things.
Yeah.
And, by bringing Jazz Chisholm in, you are tossing a potential grenade into there.
And for no good reason. If all he's got is some random pop, they have that in Ryan Bliss, who can also run. He doesn't hit for content. He doesn't do anything very well.
Yeah, it's just potential, man.
Well, that's not what they need right now at all. So let me give you a few other names. All right, enough with Jazz. He's a non-starter. Let me give you a couple other names that are probably not going to happen, but they might be a good second option for the Mariners. Is there any chance Charlie Blackmon moves?
No, I doubt it.
10-5 guy. He just says, I want to retire in Colorado.
Can you blame him?
Not really, but hey, if you have an opportunity to go to the playoffs one more time, I've just always liked him, like his game. I know he's not what he once was, but he does still hit for high average. He's a good veteran presence.
I'll be honest, I haven't heard his name. But if the Rockies at this point aren't willing to trade Ryan McMahon, like what are they doing?
They're such a bizarre organization.
Really,
I mean,
it's just they're the epitome of what are you doing?
All right, that's all I got. I can't come up with any more unless you think Lamont Wade is going to move, because it doesn't seem like the Giants are going to be dealing either.
So here's what I think about that. And I'm not suggesting Lamont Wade is going to move, Mike. What I am hearing, though, and we're still sort of early in the process, and I think things are going to start to flesh themselves out in the next week. What I keep hearing is that there are going to be teams that try to buy and sell. It's a really difficult needle to thread, right? This idea that you can trade present big leaguers and then go and acquire present big leaguers as well, that you can play for the present but also potentially play for the future. Are the Giants in a place right now where doing a little bit of selling and a little bit of buying may be a prudent thing for them? I think they are. I think they may be like the ideal team, frankly, to do that.
What would they need at the major league level to make something like that work?
I mean, they have starters, or at least they're getting starters back. You know, Robbie Ray is going to be coming back. Blake Snell just came back. Their bullpen's actually been pretty good this year. They need middle infield. They need a guy, and I know they have settled on a pair of shortstops right now. I'm sorry, neither Brett Wisely nor Fitzgerald is going to be their long-term solution at shortstop, and I'm not sure that like Dylan Moore would be necessarily. But could you foresee like Lamont Wade for Dylan Moore in a pretty darn good prospect? Like, is that something that, with Josh Rojas around, being able to play that utility role could theoretically make sense?
Is there any chance they'd want Jorge Polanco? Just checking. I just wanted to check. All right, fine. Probably not. If it were me, I would trade Dylan Moore and a prospect for him immediately, and I wouldn't wait 1 second to get that done. But seems like a tough one to imagine. Well, Jeff, thank you. There is so much. I could sit here and talk to you for like another hour. I got about a million different questions, but it's been a huge baseball week. We're just excited to start watching games again tonight, and we're going to have you again on Tuesday, so we're not going to have to wait too long to ask you a whole bunch more of these questions. I
know. I'm looking forward to that. Will Brock be back at that point?
Brock will have returned. He's at a big Fox seminar today. He was hanging out with Tom Brady last night. He was hanging.
Can you imagine him? How does Brock walk into the room when there are a bunch of big swingins like Brady?
Right. Not intimidated. Not intimidated.
Yeah.
But I think he's well aware that he's not Tom Brady.
Yes, I think that's fair. But Brock is such a nice guy. I'm just wondering, like, the extent of the self-awareness there.
It's pretty aware. I think what Brock is he's so genial and he's so relational with people that it's easy for Brock to be like, hey, Tom, my brother was your backup for 5 years and they sort of know each other. Or, A-Rod, they have a connection. I know he was talking to A-Rod for a while last night after Alex was on our show here this week and kind of made a whole bunch of overtures to try to reach out to the Mariners and say that he'd like to kind of be back in the fold here in Seattle. We'll leave it at that. Maybe we'll ask you more on Tuesday. Jeffrey, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next week.